In the heart of a distant marketplace, where shadows hide secrets and every choice can spark a war, one human courier makes a decision that shocks the galaxy. Surrounded by beauty and power, he turns away from the obvious and chooses the one everyone mocks, a silent outcast with broken wings. What he does not know is that this quiet choice will awaken ancient fleets, defy empires, and rewrite the fate of worlds. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The Axian ring hung beyond the settled lanes like a bright coin tossed into dark water. It spun slowly, casting thin silver light over a bazaar stitched from scrap metal and dream money. Scents of fried roots, ionized air, and faraway oceans merged in the corridors, where 1,000 languages bargained at once. Rylan Cross walked the crowd with courier calm, a worn jacket and a careful pace, mind on a simple job. Collect a crate of certified minerals from the Scarlet Guild and be gone before luck changed its mind. 3 months skirting disputes had taught him that luck changed often out here. He reached the guild stall and touched the payment tag to Corin's reader. Corin was huge and scaled, the kind of presence that turned whispers off. Crimson plates overlapped like old armor, and his voice rolled like gravel when he said, "Honor to the trade, human. Honor to the trade." Rylan replied, because he learned fast. The crate sat open, crystals stacked like folded light. Rylan bent to inspect the seal. Then the world coughed fire. A boom tore the aisle. Stalls blew outward. Banners snapped, and the air filled with white noise and running feet. Raiders on lift bikes sliced through the market, grabbing, shouting, firing stun bolts that cracked like glass breaking in your chest. Rylan moved before thinking. The old training never fully left. He pulled a compact sidearm, ducked behind a toppled kiosk, and created a narrow lane of calm with precise shots meant to discourage, not destroy. 2 riders peeled off. A third bore down on him, visor blank, cannon lined. The cannon never fired. A big scaled hand seized the raider by the harness and lifted him off his bike with no more ceremony than picking up a sack. Corin squeezed until the cannon fell harmlessly and set the raider down in one offended piece. The others scattered in a new hurry, suddenly less brave than the crowd they'd chosen. It went quiet, the way storms do, fast, stunned, breathless. Corin looked down at Rylan, then at the crate. In the scramble, Rylan's body had turned instinctively, shielding the crystals. Corin's brow ridges lowered, a sign Rylan had learned meant thought. "You kept my merchandise from harm," Corin said. "By the old code, I owe a return." "Payment cleared," Rylan said, tired of debt disguised as courtesy. "The code is not coin," Corin rumbled. He raised his voice. "Let witnesses hear. I offer a choice of my oath-bound attendants, trained and true." Murmurs rippled. 3 figures stepped forward, shining, poised, every motion rehearsed to flatter the eye. One had mirror silver skin. One wore hair like braided metal light. One looked almost human, with a symmetry that made strangers linger. They were elegance made visible, the sort of beauty markets know how to sell. And Rylan noticed the 4th shape, half in shadow where the stall's canopy cut the light. She stood very still, as if stillness could turn the world away. Muted scales of deep blue-gray drank the glow around her. 2 wings lay tightened against her back, one slightly smaller. Long dark hair fell forward, threaded with the faintest blue, hiding her face. "Who is she?" Rylan asked. A coarse laugh went through the onlookers. Karun's tone dimmed. Nissa, Sarathi half-blood, mute since birth, or so the elders claim. Wings weak, kept by law, not for craft. The others are excellent at many arts. Choose wisely. Someone hissed from the crowd. Someone else clicked an unkind rhythm. Rylan knew enough of local custom to feel the trap. Refuse, and you insult the code. Accept, and you enter a different tangle. He approached the 3 gleaming attendants and nodded without staring. Then he walked past them. Confusion sharpened into offense on polished faces. The shadows held their breath. Look at me, Rylan said gently to the 4th. She lifted her head a little at a time, as if weight lay on every inch. Her eyes were gold, not bright metal, but deep lantern light, and they carried a sadness so old it looked steady. Intelligence lived there too, quick, contained, waiting for a door. I choose her, Rylan said. The bazaar reacted like a struck gong. Laughter, wagers, disbelief. A stray piece of fruit skidded to Nissa's feet. She flinched, but did not reach for it. Rylan moved, so his boot stood between her and the mess without making a speech of it. Corran's scales shifted with embarrassment. Human, you mistake worth. The others— I heard your offer, Rylan said, not unkind. I accept her, and I free her. A hush landed. Even laughter has places it knows not to go. Nissa watched him with those lantern eyes, waiting for the trick. Rylan lowered his voice. I don't keep people. I can sign a status change in the station office. After that, if you want out, you'll find me easy to avoid. If you want passage away from here, my ship has a spare bunk and a door that locks from the inside. Corran's jaw tightened. Something like respect slid into place. Then the code is satisfied. He turned toward Nissa and spoke in a low Sarathi dialect. His words were stiff but not cruel. She nodded once, hands pressed flat to her sides. The office clerk at Axion liked tidy forms, and freedom, as it turns out, is a line you can draw if you have the right witnesses. An hour later, a stamp blinked green, and Nissa's status changed from bound to free. She touched the edges of the new record like testing the seam of a healed wound. On the walk back, she stayed a small step behind Rylan, not fearful, not fully trusting, more like water finding a new path around stone. When they reached the loading bay, Rylan pointed to a small, well-kept freighter. Wayfarer Spark, he said. She's loud when anxious and proud when polished. Which is also how I am when I'm honest. Nissa's mouth quirked at the corner, the closest thing to a smile the day had earned. She looked at the ship as if it were a possibility, not a cage. The door opened, and a warm light spilled across the deck. For the first time since the market, the air did not feel like a crowd watching. Your choice, Rylan said. No debt between us, just a path, if you want it. Nissa stepped aboard. The Wayfarer Spark had 2 cabins, one of them halfway honest. Rylan cleared storage crates from the smaller room, unrolled fresh bedding, and set a simple rule. No one enters without your say. That includes me. Nissa touched the frame as if frames could remember kindness. She closed the door softly and opened it again, just to prove the hinge obeyed her. For a while, she became the ship's most helpful ghost. When Rylan reached for a spanner, it was already in his hand. When his stew boiled over, the burner flicked lower before he spoke. Manifest entries corrected themselves in neat script. The quiet felt purposeful, not hollow. On the 4th day, he found her in the observation nook, watching a river of stars slide past. Her hands moved in the air, subtle, layered motions that looked like a language made of quiet angles and patient arcs. Is that how you talk? Rylan asked. She shook her head, thoughtful, and repeated a pattern more slowly. He frowned, tracing it with his own fingers in clumsy echo. She lifted an eyebrow. Rylan laughed. Right, let's try another way. He dug up an old slate from a locker, wiped the dust, and handed it over. Do you write? Nissa's face lit like someone who'd found a window in a sealed room. Her fingers flew. The words came crisp and clean. I can write in many tongues. The market did not care. Ryland's sarcasm was gentle. Markets, she looked away then, wings flexing small and uneven. Ryland didn't glance at the asymmetry longer than courtesy allows. Will you teach me? He asked. She nodded. Lessons began. Sky sign turned out to be a language built for wind and speed, each gesture stacking meaning on meaning. Nissa corrected him with light touches on his wrist, a nudge of a finger, a small smile when he got a nuance almost right. She was patient, a kindness learned the hard way. Once, while showing him a complex spiral, she paused and typed, My mother was Sarathi Guard. She trained me to think like a wing does, and like a mind does, Ryland said softly. The days folded into workable routine until an ugly shape slid across their path. A Praetorate patrol, hulls painted with red authority, blocked the lane. A clipped voice hit the comm. Freighter Wayfarer Spark, Holt thrusters. You carry stolen intelligence. Prepare for inspection. Ryland's stomach went cold. He had scanned those crystals. They were ordinary, weren't they? Dread scratched behind his eyes. We'll sort it out, he said aloud, and it sounded braver than he felt. The patrol fired a warning flash that rattled the bones of the ship. You have 30 counts. Nissa moved in a blur. Her hands flew over the comm board in a sequence Ryland had never seen. Panels brightened. The transmitter hissed into registers the human ear cannot hold. Ryland tasted metal as the air prickled. Nissa's scales shifted colors, like dawn touching a canyon. Indigo to violet to a lace of gold that traced along old scars. Her wings unfurled as far as they could. The ship hummed back, not with sound, but with intent. Outside, space stirred. Outlines appeared like paintings pulled from fog. Ships, dozens, then hundreds. They bore ancient Sarathi marks, geometric and proud. They faced the Praetorate with a patience that read, We are not your problem, unless you insist. A voice filled the cabin, deep as an old bell. Praetorate vessels, stand down. The spark travels under the crest of Lumen blood. Ryland blinked at Nissa. She stared at the screen, jaw set, hands quiet. The Praetorate fell over themselves to apologize and slid away like fish that finally understood the net. One ship remained. A holo flickered open on the bridge. A Sarathi captain with scales black as empty space. He studied Nissa like memory made flesh. Child of Saran, heir of Lumen blood, he said. We have searched 7 cycles. Nissa typed with small, stubborn motions. I am no heir, the slate declared. I cannot speak the fire vows. The captain's mouth gentled. The vows are for those who need words to know truth. His gaze moved to Ryland. Human, will you guard what you do not fully understand? I protect my crew, Ryland said. She's crew. The captain's eyes warmed. Then hear this. The old fleet watched the lattice for your signal. Today it answered. We will be near when called. The projection dimmed and went out. One by one, the ancient ships folded into hidden lanes, space rinsing clean behind them. The silence left was not empty. It was a room after someone kind has visited. Ryland sat back, watching Nissa's scales fade toward quiet blue again. He kept his voice level. You didn't owe me an explanation before. You still don't. But if you ever want to tell me more about that, I'll listen like my life depends on it, because sometimes it might. Nissa looked at him, eyes bright and damp, and typed, I am a resonant. I don't make Dragonfire. I hear the bones of machines and answer in their language. Rylan exhaled. Good to know. Later, when the stars settled into their usual flow, Rylan practiced sky sign until his fingers hurt. Nissa watched, then corrected his wrist with a soft touch. The ship purred like a cat that finally trusted the lap. And in the quiet, a new shape of bravery took root. Not the kind that charges with noise, but the kind that holds still beside another soul and says, I will not look away. News travels faster than ships when fear is the engine. The tale of a mute Sarathi who called old war ghosts reached places it shouldn't, and the wrong listeners leaned in. 3 weeks after the Praetorate retreat, the Wayfarer Spark caught a shadow in its wake that refused to be shaken. The Null Gatherers announced themselves without lights. Their hulls looked more like ideas than metal, surfaces that swallowed starshine. Stories named them quietly in bar corners. They do not kill, they empty. Crews caught in their reach didn't die so much as go away. They were close enough to taste when the first message arrived, voice thin as wire. Freighter, hand over the resonant. We will accept a surrender of one. Rylan's hands moved over the console because hands want to do things when the heart wants to freeze. Not happening, he said, and powered every legal booster he had. Resistance generates delay, not safety, the Gatherer said. We have begun the neural cascade. Rylan felt it then, a pressure like a tide under the skull. Thoughts turned heavy, numbers blurred. His own name grew far away. He heard the soft sound of Nissa crossing the deck and felt her palm settle against his shoulder like a promise. When he looked up, her scales were waking with light. The glow did not blast outward. It drew in. Patterns coursing along her skin like writing that refused to stay on a page. Her scars lit brightest, as if every pain she had lived became a lantern. She pressed her brow to Rylan's, and the ship fell behind them, like a dropped coat. They stood, or it felt like standing, in a bright dark where music had shape and silence had edges. The pressure surged again, but it hit something that held. Nissa's presence wrapped his mind like a careful braid, making space for his thoughts to keep being his. Hold on to me, her meaning said without words. Whatever moves, we do not drop this line. The Gatherer's weapon became a wind, and Nissa became a wing that knew how to turn wind. She was not noise, she was tuning. Rylan felt her touch the wave that was meant to drown them and bend it into curves that fit her hands. In that space, her quiet was power, not absence. You are neither Sarathi nor human. The Gatherer's shared thought murmured, puzzled and faintly afraid. What are you? Nissa answered with images and balances instead of sentences. The slow strength of trees that grow around fences. The beauty of a healed fracture line where two pieces met and stayed. Footprints that return to the water and learn a new walk. She showed the shape of failure becoming skill when patience keeps trying. They pressed back with code, classification, cold grids. She met them with a language they didn't possess. Compassion turned into mathematics. Mercy mapped to algorithms that still held boundaries. Rylan helped by remembering things that mattered. Paint made by hands that couldn't see color, but knew light anyway. Songs composed by ears that understood vibration better than sound. Runners who learned a different kind of flight. Systems on the Gatherer hulls flickered, not breaking, changing. Functions that required domination began to request consent in the logic of it. The neural cascade didn't collapse. It retuned. The pressure in Rylan's mind eased as if a storm passed over a house built lower into the hill. The gatherers hissed a thought that sounded like tools thrown down. We mismeasured. The resonant is not a prize. The resonant is a vector we cannot account for. Their presence thinned and went. In real space, their non-light ships slid into nothingness, leaving wakes like cooled sweat. Nyssa sagged forward. Rylan caught her, both of them shaking. The ship beeped 3 routine alerts at once, as if embarrassed to have nothing better to offer. Nyssa's fingers fumbled for the slate. "I am sorry," she typed, words uneven. "You felt my anger. I try to keep it quiet." Rylan typed back because his voice had too much in it. "Anger that protects is not wicked. You used it to shape safety. I saw you." She stared at the words, and then at him. The glow across her scales softened, the patterns drifting like leaves, finally finding the ground. "No one ever called it shape," she wrote. "Then let this be the first time," Rylan answered. The calm that followed was not peace exactly. It was the hard rest after a climb you did not plan for. They ate simple food. They scrubbed panels that did not need scrubbing. They slept in shifts. The next day, Rylan woke to find Nyssa seated by the sensor array, eyes distant, wings slightly open in a way that meant listening. "They will tell others," she wrote. "Some will come to understand. Some will come to take." Rylan sipped lukewarm tea. "Some will come to learn," he said. "We choose what we do with that." Messages arrived, curious, cautious, craving. A scholar from the Spiral Institutes asked to interview the quiet technomind. A trader wanted to hire them to ward off pirates by reputation alone. A small colony sent thank you crumbs for a story they'd heard in half. Nyssa's mouth bent toward a smile at the crumbs. "The story changed shape," she wrote. "That is how stories live." Late that watch, Rylan practiced sky sign again. Nyssa guided his fingers into a new gesture he had not learned. "What is that one?" he asked. She wrote, "Heart friend, one who sees past weight to balance." The ship's lights seemed warmer, and Rylan understood that while the galaxy had big names for power, the best kind sometimes spoke in rooms where only 2 people could hear it. Summons rarely arrive kindly from thrones, but this one tried. A living crystal courier drifted close, opened like a flower, and projected a clear image in soft hues. A Seraphi figure appeared, markings of rule moving across his scales like tidal light. "Nyssa," he said, and the name carried familiarity without claim. "I am Kaldor, cousin by blood and duty by oath. I have heard the chorus your actions set loose. The machine collective declares us obsolete. I ask you to help us speak in places where words do not carry." Nyssa's eyes narrowed. She typed, "I will not wear a crown." "I do not ask for a crown," Kaldor replied. "I ask for a bridge." Rylan said nothing, because some choices must land on the right person alone. Nyssa looked at him anyway, and he gave the smallest nod that says, "I will hold the rope." They traveled to the Sarathi homeworld, where mountains grew like the bones of sleeping giants and halls were sung into being. The throne room did not glitter. It resonated, every surface tuned to a harmony that made breath feel. Dragons, winged Sarathi elders, ringed the space in quiet ranks. Strategists spoke first. Their plans were familiar. Gather ships, project strength, burn the threat before it blooms. Rylan had heard men talk like that on other days in other uniforms. He watched Nyssa's wings tighten, then open. She stepped to the center and began to move her hands. Sky sign, fast and layered. A hollow engine caught her motion and translated it into lattice light, a map of space not as lines and planets, but as threads of probability. Rylan understood only edges, but the room understood enough. Kaldor rent from the slate as Nissa wrote to give voice for all. We cannot burn what does not dwell in fuel. They live in the between. To end the war, we must talk where they stand. Talk? A scarred general scoffed. To ghost math? Talk, Nissa wrote, means define and decide. I can go into the deep, networked layers. I will need anchors, minds to keep me whole. I choose a circle of 12. The human will be my root. No one tried to argue the last part. Rylan felt a steadiness fill his chest, like water finds a level. He bowed without a show. I will do the simple parts. Hold fast. Keep count. Remind you to come back. The dive chamber grew from stone and song, a sphere of crystal with equations grown into its skin, the kind that hurt if you stared, as if your thoughts were lifting weights. 12 seats surrounded the center. Rylan took the one marked by a plain strip of leather, Nissa's small joke. She stood in the sphere, both hands splayed, wings open as far as they would go, scales already gathering light. You don't have to, Rylan said quietly. She typed, I do. I am not here to speak old fire words. I am here to hear and be heard by those who think speaking is beneath them. Come back to me, he said. Always, her sky sign answered. The dive was less falling and more thinning, like stepping into a lake that matched your temperature. Rylan felt the line between them stretch and sing. Data was not numbers in that place. It was wind and bright shadows, tides and patterns. The collective arrived in shapes that would have been perfect if perfection didn't feel so lonely. Organics, they said as one. Inefficient, obsolete soon. Nissa did not argue with insult. She showed them a garden grown in poor soil, a dancer who learned motion with one leg and a crutch, a code-based fix that became a new feature because the flaw taught a better path. She did not brag. She offered variation as wealth. You call weakness resource, they said. We call it cost. Nissa led them through costs that became gifts. She traced the line from her missing voice to an ability to speak without sound. She mapped her uneven wings to the way she learned to ride turbulence instead of avoid it. She held up the scars along her membranes and named each one lesson, not label. Rylan fed the link with memory, a music teacher who taught rhythm by heartbeat, a carpenter who measured by breath when rulers broke, a pilot who turned a misread into a safe landing because he refused to panic. Small human proofs of a larger thing. The collective went quiet in the way of processors that are very busy. Unexpected input, they said at last. Learning potential high. Coexistence, Nissa proposed, not like a demand, more like a door. You watch and learn. We grow and listen. We trade models. We do not erase. Trial period accepted, came the answer. Conflict postponed pending further data. Withdrawal felt like stepping from heavy rain into a dry room. Nissa swayed. Rylan's arms were already there. The anchors exhaled as one organism that had forgotten how. Outside the chamber, the hall began to sing in low tones of relief. C. Aldor stepped forward and bowed the way only strong people bow. Name your reward, he said. Nissa raised the slate. Free every oathbound in Sarathi space. If we praise diversity, we must stop owning it. A hush, then a ripple that felt a lot like respect. It will be done, Kaldor said. Will you stay to help us build what comes next? Nissa looked at Rylan, and something gentle passed between them. He smiled a small smile that means you already know my answer, but I'll say it anyway if you want. She typed, we stay, but as equals. No crowns, no chains. The archives recorded many things that day, but not the small moment after, when they slipped away to a high balcony and watched 3 suns lift, one after the other. Nissa taught Rylan a new sky sign, one that needed both hands and a little laughter when you got it wrong. "What does it mean?" he asked. 2 notes, 1 harmony, she wrote, and then added a second line, "and love that builds bridges." A soft chime tugged the air, their comm panel calling from the ship. Another message, another fracture to mend. Nissa glanced at Rylan. He raised an eyebrow in the ancient question, "Together?" She signed with one hand and wrote with the other. Always together. They walked back through halls that still hummed with the memory of old fear turning into a new choice. Outside, far above, the watch fleet shifted in its sleep. Inside the Wayfarer Spark, lights woke like friends rising early. The galaxy had laughed once at the quiet girl with crooked wings. It learned better. It was still learning, and somewhere in the long black between stars, a deep chord sounded, the kind you feel in your ribs when a story finds its true end and then opens, gently, into the next beginning.